I'm Jerry Savage, and this is the Savage Edge, and this is Hendricks. Hendricks, say hello to everybody. Hendricks is a quarter horse, and he's a really good boy. And Hendricks is going to be our coach for this afternoon in this episode, and we're going to revisit what we talked about last week for a few minutes, and it's validation. I want to unpack that just a little bit more because I think validation is something that's very important to us in our sales process and in our communication and how we build our relationships with our clients and just with anybody in general. And with Hendricks here, because I've known Hendricks for a long time. I've actually never worked with Hendricks before, and he's probably 10 times as quiet as Charlie is. So, but let's talk about validation now. I said last week, if you did everything right, you've met someone, a new potential client, you understood what their personality style was, and that you found common ground with them and were able to start to build a relationship, they began to trust you. Now, over a short period of time, that is difficult, right? Because how do you trust somebody? Well, it's your actions. It's doing what you say you're going to do. It's part of integrity, right? And so, Hendricks doesn't really know me that well, but he has a good sense, right? Horses' sensory acuity is way beyond what humans have, right? They can hear. There's ear. He can hear a long ways away. He can hear and focus on what's going on quite a ways away from us. And he is choosing right now to stand here very docile, and he's focused on me, right? And so if I were doing anything that would discount that, or if I was doing anything that would show him otherwise, he probably wouldn't stick around, because horses are prey animals and it's fight or flight with them. So the reason their sensory acuity is so good is so that they can sense danger. He is always living in the present. Now I'm going to talk about that in just a few minutes, because living in the present is exactly what we need to be able to do when we communicate with someone. Because if we're not present, how are we going to understand what their style is? We're going to barrel in and do what we want to do, and then that's it. And then wonder why it didn't turn out the way we wanted it to. It's the same as being the decider in the sales process, right? Remember I said you can't be the decider? You can't decide for yourself what product or service is going to be right for that client. They have to tell you that. And how do they tell you that? Through a discussion and through communication, all right, Hendricks? And it's through that discussion that you start to understand what it is that they actually need, or maybe uncover a need that they don't know about right now. And through that process, they're looking at you, and just like Hendricks is assessing me, right? And I guarantee that process started as soon as I took him out of his stall. Remember I said it takes a person 7 seconds to decide whether you're okay or not, right? So it's 7 seconds. 7 seconds is 1 second short of a successful bull ride. That's why I use that. Now, if Hendricks didn't get a good feeling about me back then, yeah, he would come with me, but he wouldn't be standing here like this, I guarantee you. And not that I've done anything spectacular. He just feels like he can, for the moment at least, trust what I'm doing. And so when we start building a relationship with a client, it's not that they trust us 100% going through, but they trust us enough to keep going in the process. And then everything keeps adding up. You say something, you do what you say you're going to do. And even if that goes on until the next meeting, until you close the sale or open up that new relationship for future things, as long as you are continuing to do what you say you're going to do, and you are aware of their needs, and their needs come first because they are the client and you're serving them, right? So now let's bring that to the validation that we talked about. What happens if you did do all of those things right, and you got to the point where you were going to ask for business because you felt like, okay, this is the right product for this client. This is the right service for this client. We've gone over everything. I have validated everything that I've done because I've backed it up with studies, anecdotally with people that had used the product or service before, and now I'm going to ask for the business. And then they said, whoop, wait a minute. They put up the stop sign. Now, if you've done everything right, as I said last week, you got to welcome that. You got to welcome that objection because it just means, one, you haven't solved all the issues, but they're there with you and they're on the playing field. And that's the main thing. Right, Hendricks? So with Hendricks, I need to validate all the time, right? With any course, like with Charlie, when I've had Charlie out here, validation is like reinforcement. It's reinforcing that they can trust us. It's reinforcing that they've made a good decision, right? That they've made a good decision. And I remember, many sales calls that I was on in the medical device industry where I would make sure that I had that information, some of it on the tip of my tongue, some not, where I could go back and understand once they gave me the objection because I was so knowledgeable about the product and so knowledgeable about the need that we had uncovered that we could go back together and I could give them another paper. I could make another phone call. I could do another demonstration and fine tune the benefits that we needed. I could address the cost issue because if the cost was an issue, then, we needed to solve that, right? And that is all validation. And validation, the only way you get to validate is if somebody trusts you. If somebody trusts you to that point where they're going to continue to listen to you. Now, if they don't, that's where it all ends. So if you are the decider, I guarantee you that's where it all ends. 90% of the time or more. I don't have that exact number in my head, but I know it's really high. And so what happens is they say, well, let me think about it. And when they say, let me think about it, they're not asking for a solution. They're asking for an exit, right? Let me think about it. Let me think about it means that you haven't uncovered everything that you need to uncover. Now, there are times when legitimately, let me think about that, but let me think about it comes with something else. Let me think about it a little bit because I'm going to need to discuss this with my team. Let me think about this because I'm going to need to discuss it with my wife. Now they're giving you other opportunities for the next step. You validated it and they're still giving you an objection, but you're confident that you did the right thing. They're confident that, you're the right person for them to be their salesperson or their advocate. And now you've got to go back and say, well, that's great. Why don't we make an appointment and we'll review that with your partners? Is there a meeting coming up that you're going to discuss it? I understand you need to discuss that with your wife. Is there any questions that I might be able to answer for her? I say that because years ago when I got out of the Marine Corps, I was in the automobile business and people would come in and they'd act like the decision maker and they weren't exactly the decision maker. Not that their wife or their husband were the decision makers, but they also needed to make that decision together. And sometimes if somebody has to make a decision together, still go through your presentation, still validate, because if you don't validate, you'll never get that meeting with the decider. You'll never get that meeting and you'll never be able to carry it on. Now, if I don't validate everything I do with horses like Hendricks here and with Charlie, obviously, I may be able to get on and ride the horse, but they're never going to be one with me. They're never going to be so connected with me that they're just going to feel and know what I'm thinking to do next, right? If you get to know somebody really well and they trust you, you think about a personal relationship where you can almost repeat somebody's words before they come out of their, or say the next words before they come out of somebody's mouth. That's a really strong relationship, right? A lot of times when I'm on Charlie, if I'm really connected with him, it's just the slightest command that's going to get him to move in the direction that I wanted us to go, right? But if I'm not, and I make the wrong move and he goes the other way, I may get uptight. And guess what? That's not his fault. That's my fault. So if somebody throws up an objection and you haven't validated, guess what? That's not the customer's fault. That's on you. Now, sometimes people don't want to tell you everything, and that's just the way it is. And those things come out. Some things are beyond your control. But most of the time, if you've established good rapport by finding common ground and they see that you have genuine interest in them, then they're going to give you the straight scoop. And so that's how I wanted to circle back, if you will, with validation, because before we move on to asking for business, we really need to validate. We really need to understand that we've uncovered all the needs. And what are we going to do from that point? Once you have come back and revalidated and you're saying, and you're asking for business or the next steps in the process, that's a close too, by the way, right? Then the way you accomplish that is by saying, well, I appreciate the fact that we had to go back and look at those things because I want to make sure that I'm providing you with the best service possible. Right, Hendricks? And so that's what I always did. It worked for me. Several variations of that are going to work for you because guess what? You have your own way of communicating. Everybody does. And you have to find what fits for you. But the one thing that you cannot forget is that you have to communicate with a customer in the way that they want to receive the information. That's what you need to do. So I hope you guys have a great week. And Hendricks here has been awesome. And I'm Jerry Savage, and this has been The Savage Edge.